All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
In the 9th chapter of John, which is a mystical book, you read about a blind man being instantly healed, and his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. That's in the 9th chapter of John. You should read it. Marvelous, beautiful. The works of God represent the law of cause and effect, because that's a law, isn't it? The principle of chemistry are laws. Gravitation, principle of physics, where do they all come from? They're all laws of God. He brushed aside all the prevalent beliefs at that time, such as that he must have been a sinner. Well, that's what people believed in those days. They believed he must have been a sinner in a former life. They also believed that maybe the sins of his parents were visited on him. It was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. The Sabbath day has nothing to do with days of the week. Sabbath is the 7th hour, the 7th day, conviction, the point of complete mental acceptance. Then your prayer is answered. The only loss, limitation, restriction, or evil in the world is our belief in loss. There were no questions asked. Then washed ye their eyes. They went washed and they came seeing. There was no questions at all asked. The only loss, limitation, restriction, or evil in the world is our belief in loss, our belief in limitation, our belief in restriction, our belief in evil or disease. This is known as the son of perdition, or the sense of loss spoken of in the Bible. Come now, and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be scarlet, they shall be white as snow. Though be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. In Isaiah. The 9th chapter of John is the answer to those who are always asking the question, why is an innocent child born deaf, lame, or crippled? The law of cause and effect is the changeless principle. You may consciously use the law. If you have been misusing and misdirecting the law, you can reverse your mental attitude. Then you will change the sequence of events. I form the light, I create darkness, I make peace, I create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things, in the 45th of Isaiah. This means you can use the law two ways. When you use the law wisely and constructively, men call it God or good. When you use the law negatively, maliciously, ignorantly, or stupidly, men call it evil, the devil, and so forth. Because we inflict all manner of suffering upon ourselves by misdirecting the law of life. Our feelings and moods create. What tone do you strike during the creative act? For example, if there's someone in the parents' world whom they hate the sight of, or if there's a voice that they resent or detest, or if they're drunk or under the influence of narcotics, and during the creative act the ovum happens to be fertilized, there is a corresponding expression brought forth. These are the blind and deaf states of consciousness from which blind and deaf children come forth. Whatever tone is struck by the parents, a corresponding expression comes forth. By the law of reciprocal relationship, the child is not a victim of heredity in the true sense of the term. The child that is born is a victim of the mood of the parents during coition. In Ezekiel it says, What mean ye that ye use this proverb concerning the land of Israel, saying, The fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set in edge? As I live, saith the Lord God, ye shall not have occasion any more to use this proverb in Israel. 18th chapter. The only thing passed on to children are the moods, mental states, or beliefs of the parents. It is possible, for instance, for anyone to have a son who may become a Shakespeare, Beethoven, Lincoln, or a Paderewski, particularly if they are constantly dwelling on the characteristics of any of these personalities at the moment of conception. I knew a blind couple, you do too, in New York, who gave birth to a wonderful boy. He became an outstanding doctor and illumined man. I was acquainted also with a tubercular father and mother in the Bronx area of New York, who gave birth to a wonderful girl, who became a great musician, the mother of lovely children. If you are lifted up in consciousness to the point of acceptance or belief that your son will be noble, dignified, spiritual-minded man, then according to the law of reciprocal relationship, a corresponding mood or quality of the infinite will come forth. That's plain horse sense. I look at the pornographic cesspool of iniquity that we have today. These are children of the mind, aren't they? Isn't the book a child of your mind? Isn't the art a child of your mind? Isn't that pornographic picture that you have, or A child of your mind, yes, but a child of a distorted, twisted mind, isn't it? The sins of the fathers are fears, superstitions, false beliefs, and anxieties which disturb the children. These moods and mental states are transmitted to the children to disturb them mentally and physically. Sins are mistakes of the mind or misuse of the law. We sin when we miss the mark of harmony, health, and peace. The bad and evil acts of parents or grandparents can only be transmitted through the mind. In this way, the superstitions, fears, and errors of the past generations are given to the present. By illustration, a father instills fear of God by depicting a picture of a punitive God who will punish him. The son grows up believing in a God of wrath, a sort of despot living in the skies, a sinner in the hands of an angry God, ruling the world according to his whims and caprice. As you begin to realize the omnipotence of the Spirit within and the power of your own thought, you cease giving power to anything else. You enthrone the concepts of peace and harmony and love and joy and wholeness in your world and your mind, and you live with these ideas entering into the reality of them. In other words, you sense and feel that you're a son of God and heir to all the qualities, powers, and attributes of God. You declare your freedom and you write your declaration of independence and freedom in your heart. Begin to love all things good. The law of your mind will respond accordingly by opening for you the windows of heaven, pouring you out the blessing there is not room enough to receive. The late Judge Strord, in his inimitable books on mental and spiritual laws, point out that all of us are immersed in the mass mind, or he called it the laws of averages or the race mind. Today there are about 4 billion people thinking into that one mind, and if we do not do our own thinking, the mass mind will do it for us. We must therefore pray ourselves out of that mass mind. Jesus did not say to the blind man, "You must expiate for your karma." He healed him instantaneously. For the infinite presence condemns no man. And though a man is a cripple, he can be healed. If he's deaf, he can hear. Blind people have been healed at Lourdes and other such shrines. No questions asked. All the great men and women who ever lived on this plane still live. They have left their accomplishments, experiences, and achievements as impressions of the universal subjective mind. We read of their works in history, song, and prose. A man's son, psychologically speaking, is his idea or feeling about anything. He can give conception to any state he's capable of conceiving. If a man therefore admires or dwells on the qualities and attributes of Mozart, is intensely interested in his musical accomplishments, and would love to give birth to his son possessing similar accomplishments, as within so without, during the creative act a Mozart-like character would result, will undoubtedly be another Mozart in the musical field, but it would not be the personality called Mozart being reincarnated. That would be absurd. Dictators, despots, are extensions in space of the dictator complex present in the context of the race mind. By changing ourselves, we change the world. The world consists of ourselves in aggregation. When a cruel dictator appears in the world, it does not mean he's a new incarnation of Genghis Khan or any other dictator or tyrant who lived before. Boys and girls learn about the wars in school and in the home which the country was involved. And in some instances, they're taught to hate the neighbored nation. They're taught that in Europe. These children grow up with resentment and rage at the wrongs committed by these men. They read avidly of the crimes, atrocities, and acts of violence. These states are impressed in their subconscious mind. All of these moods, feelings, and thoughts are entertained, become objectified as conditions, experiences, and events. Whatever is impressed on the subconscious must be expressed in the world. The tyrant who appears in a nation is the embodiment of the state of consciousness of the people in the particular country, nation, or whatever part of the world in which he may appear. It is never a man who lived 1,000 or 2,000 years ago who is reborn. It's the state of consciousness that is born again. I've been young, now I am old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, or his seed begging bread. I was young, meaning I didn't understand the laws of mind. Now I am old. Age, biblically speaking, means the dawn of wisdom. When you're spiritually wise and understand the way your mind works, then the righteous, the right use of the laws, are never forsaken. You're righteous when you think right, feel right, act right, and do right, according to the golden rule and the law of love, or goodwill to all. If parents and teachers would teach the laws of mind and the eternal verities to the young, their seed would never beg bread. This means these children would never become the beggars, outcasts, thieves, and tyrants and dictators of the world. In other words, your children will fulfill your conviction of them. Children grow up in the image and the likeness of the dominant mental, emotional, and spiritual climate supplied by the home. By teaching the youth of the nation who they really are, by showing them the way, the truth, and the life, we can build a heaven on earth and prevent the appearance in the world of dictators, despots, tyrants, undesirable states of consciousness, which are perpetuated by prejudices, racial hatreds, and fear of the unknown. Teach children of the great accomplishments of the poets, artists, engineers, chemists, physicists, astronomers, mystics, and the illumined seers of the ages. And the boys and girls will tend to emulate the ideal portrayed. Your life on this plane is like the several stanzas of a poem or scenes of a play, because of the one being dramatizing himself to the many. Ancient wisdom teaches that illumination, or the great awakening to your divinity, can happen here now. If it be not now, yet it will come. The readiness is all. In order to elucidate this point, take a solid metallic substance and heat it. The temperature rises, but for a while it appears that no change is taking place. However, the moment the degree of heat is reached, which denotes the melting point, it begins to liquefy, thus changing its shape and seemingly its nature also. Likewise, water can be turned into steam, which is invisible. Pure steam cannot be seen. Water also becomes snow, ice, and hail. All are different rates of vibration of water, or H2O. When a liquid is caused to become a gas, these changes are brought about by an increase in the rapidity of vibration of the constituent particles, whether initially they are solid or liquid. Same law applies to all of us. You can raise your rate of vibration, transform yourself, by lifting yourself up to a high state of awareness through the constant contemplation on the presence and power of God within you. In this meditative, quick, lovely state, you will gradually appropriate more and more of the attributes and qualities of God. By constantly meditating in this manner, you will find a great expansion of consciousness. It is like the heat that melts the solid. The day will come when you will melt away all inhibition, fears, false beliefs, and doubts, and become the God-man here and now. The change may come as it did in the case of Paul, the twinkling of an eye, like the volatilization of a liquid into a gas. The power within man is capable of nullifying all false beliefs and man-made laws. Cases are reported where cripples invalidated for years leap and run in the presence of fires. Are they the victims of karma? Good heavens, nonsense. They run out into the street. They were paralyzed for 15 and 20 years. They're suddenly healed. In emergencies, mothers and wives lift automobiles to extricate their children and husbands. Where is this power? It is within them. Fires and emergencies are not needed to stir up the God presence within. Man can resurrect this power and wisdom by silent contemplation, the silence of his soul. Truth is lived in the silence. Truth is heard in the silence. Truth is transmitted in the silence, for God abides in the silence. When you unite with the infinite, you are in union with that which is beyond time and space. Then you are free of that which has taken place in time and space. In other words, you go from time to eternity, and you find the peace that passeth understanding. I have seen women in India, where I have lectured several times, and elsewhere too. And they look into the eyes of the little child that's born, and they say, "What sin brought you back to me?" The idea behind this is shocking beyond words, awful, frightful. The idea behind this implies that the reincarnating entity is obligated by past karma, karmic debt of some kind, and they believe that it chooses parents in order that they might work out their karmic penalties together. In other words, God is some sort of an oriental sultan up there in the skies, punishing you because you erred and you couldn't help but make mistakes, because you were born, without wisdom or understanding. Every child is. You're bound to make mistakes. So they have this weird concept of God up in the sky is going to punish you. And you had to make mistakes. You had to err. And yet because you had to err and didn't know any better, yet he's going to punish you. There's no such God. You might say, what sins did 1 million Cambodians? We're told they were sent out of hospital, they dropped dead on the way, and starved to death, and shot and everything else. Driven out of hospital. That's happening today, isn't it? Brutally murdered. Stalin, some people say he murdered 20 or 30, some say 40 million. Mao Zedong and so forth. But surely you don't think these people were evil people? No, they were in the hands of a dictator. One man's unjust act, a dictator may cause thousands or millions to suffer. They're not illumined, they're not inspired, they don't know how to get out of it. More suffer from injustice than inflicted, Would you, I said to one man, be honest with me. Would you, as an earthly father, would you punish that little boy of yours without first telling him why he was being punished? He said, no. He said, of course not. I would tell the boy. Well, then I said, you seem to have a greater love than the God, which is boundless love, and infinite wisdom, and absolute harmony. The absolute lover, You're saying you're greater than God. You're saying the Heavenly Father, is punishing his children without their knowledge of what they have done wrong, So they come into this world. Isn't that crazy? To me, it's crazy. It insults my intelligence. I couldn't teach that to a boy of 7. I don't think a kid of 7 would take it. He couldn't take it. The boy of 7 is too smart, provided he's not being brainwashed. I explained to another man, I asked an Indian one time. That was in one of the ashrams where I lectured. Well, I said, isn't it a fact that the Hindu rulers and the Buddhistic rulers and the Indian rulers, I said, isn't it true that they've kept the masses in a subservient state? These people, they're the untouchables, in India. They're still there. Those people born in a low caste, weren't they taught by these people, these people who had mansions and all that, and land estates? And weren't they taught to accept their fate as a karmic penalty for their past misdeeds? They were taught they should be satisfied. They shouldn't try and change, rise above their poverty, because that was their sins in a former life, and they were now expiating. And they'd get a reward, and it'd be a better life, and now there's a wonderful way to hold them in bondage and thrall them in misery. Isn't that the opiate of the people? To me, it is the opiate of the people. It's an absolute lie. It's a living curse. These people are not bound to be slaves, hewers of water, and drawers of water, or anything else. They're here to rise, transcend, and grow. God is the eternal now, and God is no respecter of person. So when you look at countries where they teach that, don't you see misery and suffering and squalor and filth? Yes, and I've talked to educated guides in India, and they're well educated, academically speaking, and they've said to me, I better be careful. He said, I may come back as a tiger or an animal because I haven't been leading a good life, awful. Emerson said, there is one mind common to all individual men. Every man is an inlet to the same and to all of the same. He that is once admitted to the right of reason is made a free man of the whole estate. What Plato has taught he may think, what a saint has felt he may feel. But at any time as befallen man he can understand. Who had access to this universal mind is a party to all that is or can be done, for this is the only and sovereign aid. I have seen people who were literate, never went to school, go into a trance and speak in 13, 14 languages, even in Gaelic, ancient Chinese, and so forth. Probably you have had the same experience. All languages are in your subconscious mind, all mathematics and all that are within your subconscious mind. This means that your subconscious mind, which is one with the universal subjective mind of the entire human race, possesses a memory of everything that has ever transpired in the evolution of man, both physiologically and mentally. All the languages ever spoken, all the music of the world, plus the discoveries, inventions, and experience of all men, are registered indelibly and infallibly in your subconscious mind. Your subconscious doesn't argue controversially. It accepts the premise, true or false, given to it by your conscious mind. It reasons deductively from that premise to all legitimate inferences with a marvelous clarity and accuracy. Some years ago, I witnessed an experiment conducted by a friend of mine and a man we will call Mr. X. He was a Roman Catholic and disbelieved violently in reincarnation. However, the psychologist said to him that if he put him into a trance, he would tape his answers and prove to him that he had had many, many past lives. In the hypnotic state, the psychologist suggested to Mr. X he was now taking him back 500 years, and Mr. X was to inform him who he was. Remember, the subconscious will give you anything that the operator believes in. It'll give you what the operator wants. It's in tune with the operator. To inform him who he was, where he was living, what he was doing. There was no response. The psychologist said, "It is 1,000 years ago. Who are you? What's your name?" There was no reply. Then in desperation, the psychologist said to Mr. X, "I am now regressing you way back, long before England or Ireland were ever heard of. Way, way back. Who are you, Pat?" There was silence for a minute. Then Mr. X said, "On the 7th day arrested." This ended, of course, the hypnotic experiment on reincarnation of Mr. X. Now, the reason for the failure is very simple. It is generally true. In the hypnotic trance state, you will give the operator whatever the operator wants, true or false. Even your breathing will become one with him. You will cooperate with him. Assuming the correctness of the premise, whether true or false, your subconscious, being amenable to suggestion, will give the operator what seems to be a logical conclusion. In this instance, Mr. X suggested to his subconscious prior to sleep, "I do not believe. I do not believe in reincarnation. I will give no response." His subconscious mind accepted the dominant suggestion, which was that of Mr. X. Remember, your subconscious mind accepts the dominant of two ideas. Mr. X neutralized the suggestion of the operator. You can see the humor of the response by Mr. X to the third question of the psychologist. Now, Mr. X's sister gave no contrary suggestion to her subconscious prior to the trance state, and the psychologist regressed her into different periods of history. She claimed to be Joan of Arc and spoke French in the trance state. At another time, she was a princess in Egypt and launched out into a religious disquisition of religious beliefs in Egypt. She claimed that the pyramids were built by men who went into a semi-trance and lifted all the stones by the power of the mind, cut them and fitted them into place. That all this was accomplished without the sound of hammers or other metal tools. That mind did all these things. There was, of course, no way of proving that she was a princess or Joan of Arc. After talking to her, I learned she had studied French for 4 years. She had also lived in France. Furthermore, she had also visited Egypt, had studied the pyramids and Egyptian history. In the trance state, her subconscious, in response to the suggestion by the operator, dramatized a sort of a composite of what she had read and studied. Give you anything that you want to believe in. It could be called a fictionalized presentation and dramatization. Her conclusions were syllogistically correct. That is, they were logically deducible from the premise of the psychologist that she had lived before would tell us about it. She accepted the suggestion. Same thing would be true of you. You'd give us what you read, a dramatization of what you read and what you believe. She accepted the suggestion, which became her major premise. Whatever there was within the range of her knowledge and experience, whatever she had seen, read, heard, or visited, which tended to illustrate the idea in any way, was utilized by her subconscious. At the same time, her subconscious became totally oblivious to all facts or ideas which did not conform and which were not in accord with the operator's suggestion. Inductive reasoning is not a quality of the subjective mind. I'll give you anything you want. One of the most interesting factors discussed by many people is that they claim to remember their previous incarnations. Furthermore, in remarkable detail, some say they were priests in ancient temples, giving the period, location, and other interesting highlights. There is no doubt that some people seem to remember previous existences. They relate that the only way such experiences or memories can be explained is that they've actually lived before. That is not true. We are all immersed in a great pool of mind. Phineas Parkes Quinby said in 1847, "Our minds mingle like atmosphere. Each has an identity in the atmosphere. Don't you know that your mind is a great reservoir containing the mental experience and reactions of all people who ever lived at all times everywhere? That you have memory of all languages, you've been everywhere, you've seen everything, you've been everywhere, the whole world is within you. Don't you realize that? It's a simple spiritual truth. Surely, you were there when the morning stars sang together and sons of God shouted for joy. Surely you were, because you were spirit, you were mind. And you experienced all things. You wrote all books. You've been Jesus, Moses, Elijah, Buddha, Lao Tzu, and all of them. You've been all men who ever lived, who ever will live, and who are living now, because you are spirit and you are mind. And the whole world is within you. Is there something you haven't, that you don't know? There's nothing. You were there. So your mind contains the experiences and reactions of the ages. What's strange about you going to India or Bombay, knowing seeing the various temples and shrines and all that, and you were, say, I remember I was here before, you find your way in a city. It's a common experience. All cities are within you, the whole world. When the mist of matter begins to thin a little bit, and you become spiritual. Is there some voice you haven't heard before? Is there some language you haven't heard? All languages are within you. Your mind and spirit, you've been everywhere. Good heavens, that's horse sense. It is possible for a clairvoyant or a psychic to look back in time and see George Washington kneeling on the snow, or hear Lincoln giving the Gettysburg Address. There's nothing lost in my holy mountain. It's all registered in your subconscious mind, called the Akashic Record. It doesn't mean that you are Lincoln. It doesn't mean that you're an incarnation of George Washington because you saw him in retrospection, that you look back and you saw him kneeling in the snow. It simply means that you tune in on the mental picture of vibration, which is forever embodied in the universal screen of the universal subjective mind. All things coexist in the mind principle of the eternal now. Sensory impressions of all men who ever lived are within you. You can easily tune into the vibration of some previous experience which someone else had and think it's your own. The light principle within you was never born, will never die. This light principle is infinite spirit, has played all roles, created all countries, has been everywhere, has seen everything, experienced all things. Think clearly, and you will perceive through psychic perception. The one mind operating through you wrote all Bibles and all books, established all religions. That one mind is within you. God in the midst of you is mighty to heal.